What's up, everybody? Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic, and I have yet another collection update for you. Been pretty much collecting a nice stack of different things. Got some stuff from Rotted Life's distro once again. Also have a pair of gifts from one Thrash Maniac 99. He sent me some more cool stuff. Thank you once again, Levi. Also had another one gifted to me from afar from Ashen. They sent us a copy of their new album as well as a new t-shirt, which was in the last collection update. Thank you again, Ashen. And some stuff that I picked up at an antique mall and are distinctly non-metal, but stuff that I love, I grew up with, and I wanted to go over. So yeah, we got another killer batch here of stuff, so let's just get right into it. Cruelty, A Dying Truth. This is the debut full-length from this Japanese death metal, hardcore, doom metal hybrid. I don't know, it's kind of like a mix of all three of those things, but if I just said this sounds a lot like a very doomy version of like Frozen Soul or 200 Stab Wounds, I think that would be pretty damn accurate. Now, I got into these guys courtesy of their split with Terminal Nation. That was an amazing split, and as heavy as Terminal Nation is, they might have got out-heavied by this band. As soon as this guitar tone hits, like, it is thick, it is heavy, lots of slam riffs, hardcore D beats. This is just an absolutely monstrous fucking album. And this band goes for a more doom-laden sound, like namely on tracks like Nothing More, Vengeance, and Dark Side. It kind of brings along that sort of like Unga Bunga Ooga Booga fucking caveman style death metal along with it, and it makes for a very unique sound. Japan in general just does metal so eclectically. I love how they just blend things, and there's sort of a musical fearlessness to a lot of their music, and it really comes through in here. This is just a flat-out monstrous and pretty creative for as primal as it is album. Because I wouldn't call any of this technical, it's primal. It has very simple but effective chugging riffs all throughout, big grooves. There's definitely touches of atmosphere here and there, and, you know, like some big droning doom metal riffs, but that minimalism really works. It just kind of drives the album. Again, it's just primal chugging and lots of groove and lots of anger. The last track, Into Tu Lado, I think I said that probably wrong, actually kind of sounds like Incantation, but just kind of mixed with hardcore. Now, this is a recent signing here with Profound Lore. In fact, they come out with an album, I think, this month. So I'm looking forward to going over that, because this is just fucking monstrous. Start to finish, this is insanely heavy, very catchy, very groovy. Again, if you like bands like Frozen Soul and 200 Stab Wounds, Creeping Death, throw that in there, Gate Creeper, and maybe with a smattering of doom for atmosphere, I strongly recommend this. Definitely check this out. This was a fucking monstrous release. I'm so glad I got that split and was turned on to this band. I think I'm going to be a fan of probably the new one, judging by the single. It's pretty fucking awesome. But yeah, definitely check this out. It's nasty. Necrotum, Undead Symbiosis. This is the second album from this Romanian death metal act. I kind of just picked this one up after hearing a track on Rotted Life, and this is my first exposure to the band, and it's just straight up nasty, old school death metal, very raw production, kind of iffy on the production, like it might be a little bit too raw where it just kind of gets like muddy and cluttered, but it's definitely very riffy, lots of early Incantation nods, I would say, or very comparable to a band like Witch Vomit, like lots of like sort of just gross sounding atmosphere to the overall sound, since everything is kind of like snarly and muddy on here. Honestly, it sounds a bit more like a demo than anything else. Like, it kind of has that raw quality in terms of like, it just sounds like it was just kind of put out to get their name out there. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you like raw death metal, like this is definitely that. It's got some killer riff work on there. I especially like the song Hanging Above the Deadpool. Amazing opening riff on there, and there's some like cool Morbid Angel nods on Monstrous Deformity. I do think the song Out from the Nebula is kind of odd. It's a little weird when it comes down to the transitions. They're very sharp and very abrupt, kind of more along the lines of Autopsy, but it doesn't quite gel very well. Like, there's a lot of cool moments on it. Like, I love the closing breakdown on it. Has some really awesome bass lines that kind of lead in the song, build up some atmosphere, but the transitions in between get a little wonky and, you know, kind of takes me out of it a bit. Maybe one of those cases of trying to do too much, because they do bring in a lot of different styles on here. Like, of course, you have like the Morbid Angel tremolo riffs and sort of that Incantation atmosphere, but there's also some like brutal death metal chugging that kind of periodically pops up on here. I do think the cover of Extremely Rotten Flesh, originally done by Grave, is fantastic, even despite the rough production on here. They do a great fucking job. Overall, this band has a pretty solid sound. It's very straightforward, old school death metal, Not a lot of frills, but it has a lot of grit, a lot of fucking slime and filth to it. That's kind of what you want from old school death metal. So overall, it was a pretty fun release. Nothing really reinventing the wheel or anything like that, but it's well executed. If you're a big fan of like early Incantation, Witch Vomit, I would even say Autopsy in there, definitely check this out. This is some nice, gross, old school death metal. And yeah, if you like that sort of thing, there's probably going to be some stuff in here you really dig. So check it out. So we have a split here, also featuring Necrotum, but this is also with Reveler. This is their Officium Mortuorum split, came out last year. I saw this was out there and I already picked up the Necrotum one. I already own some stuff by Reveler. I figured, why the hell not? And it was pretty decent. Now, Reveler, I think, is pretty interesting because I want to say they started off as a US band, but I guess they're also Romanian. They have some members. They might share some members with the Necrotum. I'm not entirely sure on that one, but it says they are US and Romanian. And, well, first off, I'm going to say I have one complaint about both sides of the split is they both start off with long intros. I just think that's just a bit much for a split. Like, you both don't need intro tracks, plus you get 3 songs apiece. So technically, you get 2 actual songs from each and then 1 long intro from each, which just seems, I don't know, like just a bit much as far as like building up atmosphere. Now I have to give Reveler a little bit of credit because I like their intro a little bit because it's from one of my favorite movies, The Exorcist Part 3. Super fucking underrated movie. You have a great speech in there from George C. Scott's character, and I love pretty much every moment of that movie, and I thought that was really cool. But also, it feels kind of, again, needless for a split. But after the intro, you get into Reveler's side, and man, the production on this one is really raw. Like, this one doesn't sound like it was mixed very well, and honestly, it sounds more like a demo, and the songs themselves sound more like rough drafts of stuff they were working on, and it wasn't quite fine-tuned. Like, rhythmically, some of these songs feel a little bit off on the drums, and the drums sound kind of odd on here. Like, there's a lot of transitions on the side that just feel like they need to be hammered out a little bit. I do love the breakdown that is on Gross Deterioration. I think that is really fucking solid, but again, it's kind of how these songs were constructed. Like, they just don't gel quite as well. But again, like, this may have just been like some stuff they had, you know, extras, like, hey, let's just do a split and, you know, get some more stuff out there. And I mean, it's decent, but again, like, a little unpolished. Now, Necrotum, once you get past their long intro too, their side is, I would say, a little bit better in terms of, like, the song construction. I think these songs gel a little bit more. There's even some stuff in there that kind of reminds me of Sanguisugabog in terms of just, like, lumbering grooves, simple but primal chugging that definitely drive the songs. I will say also the production on this one is really rough, but it's a little bit more listenable than the Reveler side. I do have serious issues with how the drums sound. Like, the bass drum just sounds like someone aggressively fluffing pillows. It just sounds as though they compressed it to the point where there's no power behind it. But the riff work really drives the songs, and I think their 2 songs, Voidspawn and Depths of Ascension, are pretty solid. And it's interesting that these 2 songs came out before their full length, and I think they have some traits to them that are maybe a little bit different than ones on the full length, and they kind of gel a little bit better than some of the songs on the full length. Overall, this was a pretty decent split. Most of my issues were with the production, but I thought Reveler's side was a little uneven just in terms of, like, the quality of music and the transitions. Like, they just feel like rough drafts. Necrotum's side, pretty solid, though. Neither of them needed an intro before their half started, though. I think that's just kind of overdoing it. But again, if you like gritty, filthy, slimy, just disgusting old school death metal, definitely check out both bands. Far from perfect, but still pretty damn decent. Check it out. All right, we got another split, and this one was one that I have been waiting patiently for to actually get on CD. This is the split between Gosudar and Malignant Altar. Gosudar, Russian death metal act. Their debut album was one of my favorites when it dropped in 2021. Pretty sure it was 2021. I don't know. I fucking love that album, and they deliver 2 songs that are absolutely fucking incredible. Especially the opening track, Mortified Transformation. Oh my god, that is a 10-minute riff fest and some of their best songwriting yet. And honestly, like, their debut features just incredible songwriting, so that is definitely saying something. Their side of this is absolutely fucking amazing. The other song in here, Domination of Irreality, is also amazing. Not quite as good as the opening track. There's like a weird, like, feedback transition on that song. But overall, the quality of this band's work is so far excellent. Their songwriting is just fucking amazing. There's lots of great atmosphere, tons of great riffs. It's pretty much everything I want from death metal. Lots of morbid angel worship. It's just flat out incredible. Their side of the split is absolutely amazing. And Malignant Altars is also amazing, though a little bit bittersweet because this is probably the last thing that will be released by this band because they broke up last year, and it's still very upsetting. It sucks when you find like a new band that you're just absolutely fucking in love with, and then they call it quits after one album. But unfortunately, bands break up. That's just sort of part of it. I am sad that I missed them at MDF. They were playing at the soundstage while I was at the Edison lot, and just traveling back and forth between the two locations was just a bit much. But they have one original track on here, Malfeasance, Inexorable Enmity. I don't know if I said that right, but the font's kind of hard to read on here. I probably should have wrote that down. But that song is absolutely amazing. It's just straight up morbid angel worship. The riffs are absolutely solid. Great atmosphere, thick, gnarly production. It's fantastic. Like, if you loved anything off of their debut, you will love this song. And then the second one is an Imprecation cover, and it's also fucking awesome. They cover The Awakening of the Majestic Darkness, and they do a fantastic job. I'm not entirely sure if I have the album that song is on. That might be from their earlier demos. I still don't have that from Imprecation, but I do own a fair amount of their albums, like namely their full-length albums. And they're really awesome, and I like the fact that a new Texas death metal band was covering an old Texas death metal band and doing a really solid job. I was late to this one, namely because the CDs came out later than the tapes and the vinyl, but I'm so glad I got this because this is an absolutely fantastic split. In fact, if I had heard this or actually owned a copy of this, I might have had it on my splits and EPs of the year because this is absolutely fantastic. And again, a little bittersweet just because, you know, no more Malignant Altar. Not saying that there's no chance it could get back together in the future. Who knows? I can't predict the future, but I would love to be able to predict that one. But yeah, both bands absolutely nailed it in here. I'm looking forward to new Gosudar in the future. That band is absolutely fucking amazing. So again, if you love, I would say, namely Morbid Angel, you will love both of these bands, and I'm reasonably sure you will love all the songs on here. This is an absolutely fantastic split. Check out both bands. Go get all their works because there really isn't much by them, so that's a relatively affordable one. You won't be disappointed. It's excellent stuff. Check it out. Plague Patrol. This is their 2021 demo. This is a Czech 3-piece death metal act, and this is really fucking good. I really wasn't sure what to expect other than, well, death metal, of course, but honestly, first off, this doesn't even sound like a demo. This sounds really well produced. Like, it still sounds gritty and raw, but the mix on here is solid. The drums sound great. The guitars have a nice, thick, sludgy sound. And I like the vocal approach is more along the lines of that Martin Van Drunen sort of like throaty, asphyx, bellow that he does. It sounds like he's destroying his vocal cords every time he utters anything, and yet he can still do it, which still fucking amazes me. But yeah, this band has that sort of sound, and again, production here, really fucking good, but the music is what really stands out. This is just solid, riffy, old school death metal that isn't afraid to throw in like some more melodic flair on here. By no means am I saying this is melodic death metal at all. It's just straight up old school death metal with like good melodic lead work, like harmonies and such. And even a touch of atmosphere on the second track, Benning's Bonfire. I don't know exactly what that song's about, but it seems like a very specific bonfire. Listening to death metal as long as I have, it's probably like a reference to like some serial killer or something like that. That's my guess, but the song is really cool. It has a really good atmospheric lead-in, and these songs are really good about like building up tension, isolating a riff before going into a breakdown. I think the songwriting here is absolutely fantastic. There's honestly a lot of stuff in here that reminds me of Tomb Mold. Like, you have wild, just sort of frantic, almost sort of punky death metal that pops up, but you transition to like some really solid grooves, great fucking riffs, some doomier moments that are kind of closer to like Incantation. This is great. It's only 4 tracks. It is, very short, but it is concise. All 4 tracks absolutely kick-ass, and yeah, I definitely have this band on my radar now. Honestly, this reminds me a bit of Snet, their debut release that I picked up, which was also really good. Definitely check this band out. This is a band I definitely have on my radar now. As soon as they say they're releasing a full length, I am definitely interested because this was really fucking good. So yeah, check it out. Rancid Amputation, Vile Human Taste EP. This is the debut EP from this one-man Portuguese death metal act. I know what you're thinking. The band name is an obvious reference to Bare Naked Ladies. I think that's right. I'm pretty certain it's Bare Naked Ladies. But anyway, this is just straightforward, raw, chuggy death metal. I want to say it's a drum machine on here, and that kind of just makes sense. This is very groove-laden, just kind of lays on very simple, straightforward, chuggy riffs, and lots of like high-low layering in terms of the vocals. Kind of reminds me a lot of like Internal Bleeding, honestly. As much as I like just, you know, raw riff-driven stuff, like again, it's, you know, very simple. This does kind of feel a little bare bones. Like it lays on these riffs for maybe a little bit too long in sections. You only get like leads very sparingly on here too, so in terms of like dynamics, this is, again, just kind of the riff, the groove, and then the vocals. But something that popped up in here that I really wasn't expecting was like groove metal, like 90s groove metal. Like the song Dread Inside, there's a lot of stuff on there I think is like more comparable to like Prong or, maybe Demolition Hammer circa Time Bomb. Like the riffs kind of have that proto-nu metal sort of bounce to them. I'm trying to think of like some better comparisons, like maybe like World Demise era Obituary, which is, you know, still really good, but also kind of like that mid-period Gorefest stuff where they went groove metal and it really wasn't very good. I don't know, it's a little odd, and the vocals kind of get, you know, a little bit weirder on those songs. Like there's a standard delivery on this, like with like sort of a high-low sort of mix, but occasionally you'll get like a woo or a yeah, and it's not like growled, it's just like he goes, yeah! And you're just kind of going, why did he do that? That just seems kind of odd. But overall, this was still pretty enjoyable. I really like the song Crooked. Crooked is an absolute banger and probably has one of the most standout riffs on the entire album. But there's just some stuff on here I just think is maybe like a little out of place, and I do think it is a little bare bones at times. But this is a debut EP. I'm pretty sure like this is stuff that he's still working on in terms of like, you know, getting the whole sound to come together. And when it does come together, it's really good. It's just that, you know, there are some things in here that I just think are, I don't know, maybe like forced, like just maybe ideas for a different project that just didn't fit. But yeah, this was still pretty fun, and like I said, if you like old school death metal, like again, like kind of more Floridian, but a little bit more groove laden, I still think Internal Bleeding is pretty close. Like it's just kind of riffy, groovy, and kind of just brutal shit. But the groove metal sections on here, I don't know, like I just really couldn't get into. But still, I urge you to check it out, form your own opinions. Of course, there's links to all this music down below. You might really dig this. I think this is okay, but I'd be willing to check out more by the band. So yeah, check it out. All right, we have a pair here from Blood Red Throne, and these were sent to me courtesy of Thrash Maniac 99. Once again, thank you, Levi. These were the only two full lengths I was missing. Now, this is their first album, Monument of Death, and then their second album, affiliated with The Suffering. I was flat out missing this one, Monument of Death. Like, I've never owned a copy of this. I have a boot of this one that does have some bonus tracks that aren't on here, but having an actual copy is much better than having just a boot, in my opinion. So this is some Norwegian death metal. Actually, probably the most well-known death metal act out of Norway, since Norway is really more well-known for black metal than anything else. I mean, there's tons of killer bands from Norway, but the black metal bands, I mean, that's the scene you think of when you think of Norway. And these guys do have a black metal background. I want to say two of the members, or maybe three of the members, actually played live in Satyricon for a while. But they decided they wanted to do a flat-out death metal project, very much in the vein of like Floridian death metal, and Cannibal Corpse is probably the first band that I think of in terms of sound. This band is just all about riffs, grooves, great breakdowns, pummeling drums. I mean, pretty much every death metal trope that I like, this band does. Now, Monument of Death, being their first album, is a little bit rougher, like namely the mix. I think the guitars are a bit thin, and this one has a definite comfort zone that it sticks in. It's good. It's a comfort zone that I absolutely love because I love Floridian death metal, but it definitely hangs there a bit. Like lots of triplet chugs, lots of groovy breakdowns, you know, solid, just, you know, straightforward death metal vocals. They are maybe a little bit flat in the delivery occasionally, but overall it's good. I do like that technically both of these albums will squeeze in like a little bit of black metal in here. Like Dream Controlled Murder on here definitely has some more cold, tremolo riffs that seem more akin to black metal. And same thing with Souls of Damnation, which would go on to be the title of one of their albums in the future. Lots of thrashy sections too. The Children Shall Endure and Merry Whispers of Death, which is just sort of a interesting title. And it's Mary the name, not Mary as in like Merry Christmas or Merry what the fuck ever. This album is good. I do think some of the transitions between tracks are a little abrupt. I feel like they didn't leave enough room in between the tracks and they kind of run into each other. And again, like some of the production here, I think is like a little thin, a little too compressed for as heavy as I know this band sounds because I own all their other albums. But this one's really solid. Affiliate with the Suffering is a giant improvement. In terms of the production, this has everything that I associate with Blood Red Throne. The guitars sound much more prominent, chunkier. The drums are more pummeling. This just sonically sounds better, and songwriting-wise, it's more dynamic. The riffs on here stick with you even longer. The opening track, Unleashing Hell, does just that. It just comes in fucking swinging, and it's just an absolute monster of a track. The grooves and triplet chugging on Razorjack are exceptionally awesome. This album just pretty much builds on the foundation set by this album and exceeds what they did on this one. The leads on here are even stronger, and what I really like that came out in this one more so than this one is Erlen's bass work. I actually saw them play, I think it was with Enslaved and Dumaborger fucking years ago. That was like 2010 because Enslaved was touring on Axioma. Wow, that was a while ago. But Blood Red Throne was incredibly tight. They were amazing, but I was absolutely hypnotized by the wild fucking bass work that Erlen was doing. And this is where it starts showing like little isolated moments where you hear these little cool like bass noodles every now and then. The thrashy moments are still here. You have a little bit more atmosphere, and the additional covers on here are fucking great. They cover Obituary, Massacre, and MOD, and they do an amazing job on all of them. The Massacre and MOD ones are actually on my boot one, but this one has the Obituary cover, and they fucking crush it. These are both absolutely awesome. I love Blood Red Throne. There may not be a lot of variety in their discography, but I love what they do. It's kind of similar to Cannibal Corpse. Like, yeah, I know what to expect in a Cannibal Corpse album, much like I know what to expect in a Blood Red Throne album, but I'm generally not very disappointed at all. In fact, rarely am I ever disappointed. So once again, thank you, Levi, for sending me these. These are both absolutely awesome albums. If you love Cannibal Corpse, Deicide, just Floridian, chuggy death metal, definitely check this band out. Check out, like, I would say almost all of their work. Like, honestly, I don't think they have a flat-out bad album. But if I was going to start with one out of these two, it would be Affiliated with the Suffering. This is just a fucking killer album. But yeah, check them both out. Blood Red Throne rules. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Demelich, 20th Adversary of Emptiness. This is essentially everything Demelich has ever released, unless they plan on releasing something new, which I am fucking all for. I decided I needed to get this one after we did the retro review for Demelich's Nespithe, because this has Nespithe on it, and it is a better remaster than the one that is on Extreme Music. That remaster, I'm just not a fan of. It's very brick-walled, but this one is much better because they actually remastered it from the original recording, and it sounds fantastic. So now I have a better version of Nespithe, which was part of the reason, but the main reason is I wanted the Vanishing Sessions material, which is just 3 tracks they put out, I believe, in 2006, and they were all awesome. We decided we had to cover them in the Demelich retro review as well, and yeah, I needed them. They're fucking incredible. This band's songwriting is still kind of unlike anything else in death metal. At least to a degree. I know there's a lot of bands out there that worship Demelich and do a really good job in terms of creating their sound, or at least something close to it. But going back to the source in terms of this strange sound, yeah, Demelich is just incredible. The 3 songs on the Vanishing Sessions are all amazing. I mean, we covered them in the retro review. I would say possibly my favorite out of those 3 would be Vanishing of Emptiness, the last track. I love the kind of twisted, doomy, droning riffs, but you also have their token, like, weird, dissonant, crawling riffs. And of course, the humanoid, demonic bullfrog vocals of Antti Bowman. They are still just absolutely strange. Not as strange as the lyrics. The lyrics for this band, again, just, they are something else. But this also includes, like, all their fucking early demos, which are really awesome, too. For me, this is just an essential thing. I needed to get it. It'd been long overdue. This came out on Smart Records. And it did cost me a little bit more than I was anticipating, but it's so damn worth it. If you're a Demelich fan, and of course you don't want to pay like $350 for an original copy of Nesbite, and you also want all their other stuff, this is a great alternative. I would say this is essential for any Demelich fanboy, which is why I fucking got it. Again, especially to have a better version of Nesbite in general, and have literally everything else up until they maybe release something new. Again, I'm really hoping that the rumors that have been kind of buzzing around after MDF, like, oh no, they were talking about putting out something new. It's like, I hope those are at least semi-substantiated, because I would love some new material from them. They flat out crushed live. They were one of the best bands I saw at MDF, and I saw a lot of fucking bands. But yeah, this is absolutely amazing. We already covered it. You guys pretty much already know how much I love this band. But yeah, go get this. If you don't have any Demelich and you're looking for it, this is the thing to get. This is literally everything. Again, up until a point in the future that I can't fucking predict, but I really wish I could. So yeah, Demelich rules. This is absolutely amazing. Check it out. Dire Straits, Brothers in Arms. And we're going to get in some non-metal stuff that I picked up at the antique store. And going into my like early 80s memories as a kid, because man, the song Money for Nothing was pretty much inescapable when I was a child. I was absolutely in love with that video, the weird CGI, which was relatively groundbreaking at the time, but it was an absolute MTV staple, and my fucking ass was pretty much planted in front of the TV watching MTV in my underoos all the fucking time. Now, overall, I like earlier Dire Straits more than I like this album. This is kind of picked up for the novelty of, namely, the big singles, which are pretty much the first three tracks, So Far Away, Money for Nothing, and Walk of Life. Those songs were all over the radio as a kid. I love So Far Away From Me. I think that song is absolutely beautiful. Money for Nothing, I mean, that riff lives in so many fucking heads. It's still referenced to this day. It's one of the fucking probably most well-known songs of the 80s. I mean, this album sold like 30 million copies. This is easily their most successful album. But overall, like, the album as a whole is kind of uneven. Now, I love Mark Knopfler's guitar style. The finger picking, I think that dude is absolutely amazing. He's just entertaining to watch. I've watched a ton of live footage of him over the years, and I'm not even a musician, but I know what he's doing is just absolutely incredible. But I think it was during this time that they were looking for a slightly more accessible sound, maybe kind of going more into the 80s stuff. I know Mark had been doing like movie scores, like namely the Princess Bride score, which he did an absolutely beautiful job on that. And I think some of that kind of made its way into this, because there's a lot of like giant sweeping, you know, melodic songs that kind of lack, well, any intensity whatsoever. While the songs are pretty like Ride Across the River, Why Worry, Your Latest Trick, which actually has like a sad jazzy trombone in it, there's just sort of like an unevenness to the album. Like, you have songs that feel like they were deliberately made for singles, and then songs that kind of feel like maybe slightly more experimental stuff. Like, they're kind of all over the place on this one. Now, I do like the fact that this album definitely kind of goes all over the place as far as styles. Like, you know, there's sort of a countryish twang to Walk of Life. Money for Nothing being a kind of giant 80s rocker. One World has like some really good funky bass lines on it. And the closing title track definitely makes use of all the lush production and synths. Like, it's a really pretty giant song. But some of these songs take a little while to get off the ground, and this album was kind of mixed in terms of reviews. Like, I know like the reviews mostly in the UK, where this band's from, were maybe a little negative. Meanwhile, here in the US, this album was loved, and I think it was mostly due to the fact that, you know, that video for Money for Nothing was fucking everywhere. I mean, the song had Sting on it, and the whole I Want My MTV little line that he repeats at the end is pretty much the same melody as Don't Stand So Close to Me, so that's like 80s Inception there, I guess. But yeah, there are things that just don't necessarily fit, like especially with like kind of the poppier hooks. Mark's vocals, I mean, I think they're good for what they were doing before this, but on here, like, they just don't necessarily fit. Like, he's kind of somewhere between like Bob Dylan and Bruce Springsteen, and he can carry a tune, but it doesn't necessarily always like have the big soaring quality that I think some of these songs aspire to be, at least like the non-singles. Like the regular singles sound fine, but I still think this is a good album. It definitely hits me in my nostalgic feels. I just want to get some of their earlier stuff where I think the music was just a little bit more inventive and maybe a little less soundtracky and uneven. I feel like there were record execs to please on this one, and I think they pleased them. I mean, this is a fucking diamond level selling album, but overall as an album, it's just kind of uneven. But still, it's good. Dire Straits fucking rules. Mark Knopfler is an amazing fucking guitarist, and yeah, I'll probably get some more here. I don't know, when I come across it. Like, it's not one that I feel like absolutely pressed to get because it's pretty easy to find these albums out there. But yeah, this is still really good and a fond 80s memory, so check it out. Genesis, Duke. This is the 10th album from this UK prog rock, pop rock. I don't know, like, this is an interesting album in their career. I grew up listening to a lot of Phil Collins and Phil Collins era Genesis, so that era of Genesis definitely is the one that kind of got me into the band. I still like the earlier stuff with Peter Gabriel. I think it's very wild and very experimental, and the songwriting is very cool. But I have maybe a stronger pull towards the Phil Collins stuff just because Phil Collins was like one of the voices of the 80s for me. And my mom had this album and she played it a lot, and I really enjoy this one. And I think I enjoy it more now as an adult versus when I was a kid. This is very much a transitional album. The album before this had their first big single with Phil Collins, Follow You, Follow Me. Very catchy song. It actually, kind of, cemented the fact that Phil Collins was going to be their frontman going on, and he could definitely deliver there. And on this album, they wanted to work on some more of those, like, more just clever poppy hooks with some more simple songwriting, like Misunderstanding and, of course, Turn It On Again. Giant hits on here. They're excellent songs. The vocal hooks are amazing. The synths on here, they're always amazing because Tony Banks is just an amazing synth player. Mike Rutherford's guitar work is fucking awesome. I love how they complement the synths very well. And honestly, Phil Collins' drum work in here is really good. The opening track, Behind the Lines, he's doing some really cool, like, kind of fun off-time stuff. But I like that this album still has, like, some more proggy numbers, like namely Behind the Lines, Duke's Travels, and Duke's End, which bookends the opening melody on Behind the Lines. Cul-de-sac still has some more proggy flourishes on here. Same thing with Man of Our Times, which I think is quite possibly my favorite deep cut on this album. But you still had, again, like the poppier, hookier numbers, and even outside of like Turn It On Again and Misunderstanding, Duchess, I think, is just an excellent song too. I love the melodies on it. Transitional albums in general can be kind of awkward. Like, you have this new sound you're trying to push, but you don't want to abandon the old sound entirely, so you kind of have this midpoint. And I think these guys did it really well. But honestly, I think most of the things they do pretty damn well. I mean, this is a fucking super talented trio. I really like the lyrics on here, too. Phil was going through a rough patch. I think he spent a good chunk of the time in '79 trying to repair his marriage, and ultimately that failed. And a lot of that heart, and a lot of that emotion went into the lyrics and his vocal delivery, and I think the songs just, I don't know, they're definitely very personal. They're very emotive, and I really like that about this album. I love this album. This is probably one of my favorites with Phil Collins. I still need to get, the Peter Gabriel albums, and I do really enjoy that. But the Phil Collins era is kind of special to me because I'm still a big Phil Collins fan. Like, I love the Phil Collins solo stuff, but this early Genesis stuff, when he's still playing like regular drums too, like there's no electronic drums on this, that would definitely come later. It has all the 80s nostalgia that I want, but honestly, revisiting it, it just sounds amazing now. So yeah, if you've never checked out this album by Genesis, definitely check it out. It's sort of a meeting point between two different eras of their career, and they did it really well. So yeah, check it out. Talking Heads, True Stories. This is the 7th album from these new wave pioneers from Rhode Island. I promise we will get back to the metal here after this one, but this was yet another one I saw at the antique store, and I was like, man, I need to get some Talking Heads albums. Like, I've been, listening to that greatest hits for way too long, and I know there's a bunch of shit I'm missing. Now, this was an interesting period in the band's career. This was kind of towards the end of the Talking Heads. After one more album, David Byrne would go solo and kind of just leave the rest of the band behind to kind of pursue what he wanted to do. And this was definitely more of a David Byrne focused album here. Like, I want to say he did the majority of the songwriting, and a very lavish promotion for it, because this was also a movie, and I totally fucking forgot about it. There's also a movie called True Stories. It even has John Goodman and Swoosie Kurtz in it, and it's sort of this weird, like, 80s movie about a drifter coming to a town in Texas, that drifter being played by David Byrne, and all these interweaving stories and musical numbers. I've never seen it, and I feel like I need to, because I've been a Talking Heads fan since I was a kid. Again, another band that, you know, MTV introduced me to, and I was absolutely entranced by their weird videos. The Once in a Lifetime video really stuck with me as a kid. I was like, wow, that guy's suit seems really big, and why is he so damn sweaty? And then years later, you know, going back and listening to it, appreciating every cool hook in it, I was like, man, these lyrics are a lot darker than I remembered. But I'm a big fan of David Byrne. Like, he's just one of those eclectic musical geniuses, I would say, from the 80s. Like, I put him in that same category as, like, Prince and David Bowie in terms of just being pioneers of their sound and, you know, being hyper influential. But this album is probably like a little bit more straight-laced for him. Like, these are just, you know, fun but kind of simple rock songs. Like, the opening track, Love for Sale, is just kind of a straightforward pop rock song with a good hook to it. Wild Wild Life is probably the big one that is really known in here, that has a really interesting video too, but saying the Talking Heads have an interesting video is generally a fucking understatement, because they're all really weird. I actually like the twangy country melodies on Dream Operator. I think that's a really kind of haunting but kind of fun song. Radiohead is interesting, because that is legit where Radiohead got their name from. They named themselves after a Talking Head song. I legit didn't know that. Like, that's like legit new information. I wasn't sure where Radiohead got their name. I mean, I really wasn't, like, you know, trying to hunt that information down. It really wasn't that important. It was like, yeah, you know, it's a 90s band that has a weird name. Get in fucking line. I like this album, but I like the earlier Talking Head stuff more, back when it was more quirky and experimental. This feels mostly very safe. Like, I still think it's good, but sometimes it just feels really plain. Like, Puzzle and Evidence is a fun song, but it's hellishly repetitive. Like, it kind of lives by one melody and just repeating the same lines over and over again. I feel like I got a distilled or diet version of their usual quirkiness on this one. But still, I enjoyed this. Again, Wild Wild Life is, you know, up there with one of my favorite songs by the Talking Heads. It's just infectiously catchy. And I kind of want to sit down and watch that movie now, just because I want to see how this album ties in with it, because I know all the songs were written for it on here. And I think there are variations of the songs actually sung by different people in the film, if I'm not mistaken. I could be, but either way, I definitely want to check it out. But yeah, Talking Heads are awesome. I definitely want to get more of their earlier stuff, just because they're an eclectic, strange band, and I think definitely defined the 80s in a way, and were probably one of the most influential new wave bands, along with the Cars, and pretty much everyone here knows how much I love the Cars. But yeah, solid album, fun. Recommend the earlier stuff more than this one, but this is still really good. Oxygen Destroyer, spawned by the horrors of thermonuclear warfare. This is a comp from this Portland/Seattle-based blackened death thrash act. I don't know, it's kind of a hodgepodge of all those things, and, well, Godzilla. Like, there's a lot of Godzilla stuff in here, and of course, I fucking love that shit, because I'm a giant Godzilla fanboy. And when I saw this comp was out, I was like, well, this would pretty much give me everything that I'm missing outside of maybe a few splits. But also Godzilla. And, you know, it's Godzilla and metal. That's pretty much my fucking algorithm to some degree. So yeah, it's hard not to win with this. So this contains a lot of stuff from a ton of splits that they've done. Their original Oxygen Destroyer demo from 2015, and their second demo, I believe, Brutal Thrashing Kaiju Metal, which that one came out in 2016. And yeah, this is awesome. The riffs are excellent. This is high pace. This is blasty. This is fucking energetic as hell. And of course, I love all the samples they pepper in. And I'm enough of a fanboy where I kind of recognize what they're talking about and the samples, like the second track in here, Cycloptean Razor Beast. Instantly, it's like, no, that's Gigan. That is 100% Gigan. And the sample pretty much confirmed it. You can even hear him, like, hitting his fucking hooked claws together. Yeah, I'm a fucking giant dork. That is not exactly a secret on this channel. But yeah, I get giddy hearing all that crazy shit. And of course, the music is absolutely awesome to go with it. I love this band's intensity and love for all things Godzilla oriented. One of my personal favorites on here is Summoning the Moth of Divinity. Obviously, a Mothra reference. That one's pretty transparent. That one actually has like some more like almost possessed / early Morbid Angel vibes. Like it's a little bit more tremolo riff based. It sounds a little bit more sinister and evil, despite Mothra being like the goody of the Godzilla universe. And while this comp is like high octane, like fast as hell, like there are no breaks in these songs, the song Subsumed Within the Bowels of the Perennial Monstrosity, that's a pretty good one right there. That one is a little bit more groove laden. Like there's some really good groovy hooks, there's nice breakdowns in it. This is just a solid comp. My only issue is the last track, Relentless Desire for Nuclear Radiation. It's original from the demo, but man, like the production on it, it just sounds like TV static with a band playing kind of in the background. Like I just think it sounds too raw. Like it might have been like a live recording where they just kind of placed a tape deck in the middle of the room and just jammed around it. But that's the only one on here that it's just kind of hard to make out the music because the production's so raw. But everything else in here absolutely whoops ass. And that's pretty much par for the course of this band because everything I've picked up by Oxygen Destroyer has been awesome. Might have something to do with the Godzilla stuff too. Like I am a giant fanboy there, but honestly, no, their music just fucking whoops ass. So yeah, if you like violently fast, blackened death thrash, this is that band. And of course, if you love Godzilla related stuff, yeah, no, this is that band. Like maybe more so than Blue Oyster Cult. I mean, they definitely have the more famous song, but these guys have more songs about Godzilla and different kaiju. So yeah, I know that's kind of winning, at least in my dorky book. Either way, strongly recommend this comp, and I strongly recommend getting anything by Oxygen Destroyer because they're just fucking awesome. So yeah, check it out. Pukewraith, Banquet of Scum. This is the first full length from this one-man Canadian death metal act. And that one man happens to be Brennan Dean of Gut Void and Fumes, which are two bands I already liked. So this was a pretty easy one for me to pick up. Now, I know a lot of people recommended this one to me, God, when it dropped, and I just did not get around to getting it. So my bad there, but I get inundated with a lot of recommendations, so it's really hard to keep up. But when I saw this in a distro, I had to snag it. I jammed 2 tracks and I was like, yeah, no, this is fucking great. This is old school death metal. It's gritty, it's raw, and despite there being a drum machine, the drum program sounds great. It sounds very organic. So everything about this just sounds solid. The production's excellent. The vocals are deep and swampy and gurgly, and it just fits with this murky guitar tone on here. But this is just riff-centric as hell. Lots of D-beat sections, but still like blasts, good breakdowns on here, especially on Mucklord, the last track, which is just one of my absolute fucking favorites. Fleshmaster is a banger too, and Cyclone of Maggots. Yeah, some of these song titles are fucking great, like Cruisin' with the Grave Smasher, which I assume that might be that dude on the back. I mean, he's driving, so I assume that's the guy you're cruising with. There's definitely like a self-aware over-the-topness about this, especially in the themes, the song titles. And it works. It all works fantastically well because, I don't know, I like a little bit of humor in, like, you know, my metal every now and then. Like, give me something where you're kind of, like, making fun of the death metal tropes and just kind of turning it on its head and having fun with it. And, of course, in no way does that mean the music has to suffer for the sake of humor. The music on here is absolutely fantastic. I loved every song on here. There really isn't a weak one. The last track, Mucklord, is possibly my favorite. I like the fact that it gets a little bit more doomy and there's some really, really good harmonies on it, but every song in here is a lot of fun and it's paced really well. The songs have a similar vibe, but there's enough dynamics in them and just distinct hooky riffs where they actually stand apart. So yeah, to everyone that told me to get this one, which I know there were a lot of you, you guys are right, 100%. This is definitely something I would love, and this is awesome. I definitely can't wait for more from this band. I know that having 2 other bands that he's working in probably means it's going to be a little bit more spaced out, but who knows, he might do like a split or something like that, or an EP after this. I don't know. I fucking dig this. This is just excellent old school death metal with a lot of tongue-in-cheek fun to it, and yeah, it's hard not to win there with me. So I'd say if you like, I don't know, like stuff like Molder or Cryptworm, it's definitely in that vein. Definitely check it out. This is just a fucking fantastic album. Hormagaunt In The Flesh. This is the debut full-length from this Australian death metal act. This was actually sent to us with Ashen's care package. Thank you once again, Ashen. They sent us a t-shirt, a copy of their album, and then this one was also wrapped in there. And I was like, I know nothing about this, and I'm curious. Now, when I was looking it up, I noticed that the name is actually a reference to Warhammer creature. I'm not well-versed in Warhammer. Like, as well-versed as I am is I own Bolt Thrower albums. So that's about it. But the creature looks pretty cool. It's got like fucking armor and fucking like praying mantis hooks for fucking front arms. I mean, it looks like a lethal fucking bug. But the music itself is awesome. This is some seriously riffy death metal. I love all the weird crawling riffs that are all over here. It's very hooky. You have doomy sections. You have more brutal sections on here. It's technical, but it's not like wankery all the time. Like, this has a lot of qualities of a band like Superstition or Althar, where like they have constantly just crawling strange riffs, but they know how to work them into like really clever hooks. And that definitely is I would say the bulk of this album. The vocals on here are really solid. It's like a straightforward fucking roar. It's very powerful. It kind of reminds me a lot of Outer Heaven. But I like the fact that these songs can be brutal as hell, but they also kind of like slither and crawl. Like, there's some like creepy atmosphere to it. It's those crawling riffs that definitely have that sort of slithering quality. I feel like they kind of crawl their way through the song and just kind of add like a little bit of like extra creepiness to them. I think probably the most straightforward song in terms of being like more brutal and maybe a little bit more simplified is Carcass Enslaver, which is just fucking monstrous. Great triplet chugs, nice grooves. Love it. But I kind of liked the stuff that was a little bit stranger. Like, I don't know, like the weird sort of vibe of this band in terms of like the constantly crawling riffs. I really just got into that. Now, the demo was really good too. I liked the intro, which I think is actually from the movie Extro. Weird horror synths and lots of slimy noises. I think it's where the alien is born. It's been a long time since I've seen that movie, and I don't know, I just remember some really gross special effects and kind of weak story. I don't know, I gotta go visit that one again. But the songs on that are really good, maybe a little bit more primal, and I kind of like the thicker, heavier production on that one a bit more than I like the production on the full length. Like, they're both good, but I don't know, that sort of extra grit that's on the demo is really fucking nice. And there's also a single they put out called Corpse Eating Cult. That song's fucking awesome too, and yeah, this was like a nice little surprise and a surprise care package. So once again, thank you to Ashen for sending us all the cool stuff, including this, because this is another fucking killer Aussie death metal band. Like, you guys need more killer Australian death metal. You guys have so fucking much. Not a bad problem to have, though, at all. In fact, it's not a problem. Just keep doing it. Ignore what I said about there being too many fucking Australian death metal bands. Keep fucking churning them out. They're amazing. So yeah, if you like, I would say Outer Heaven, maybe like a little bit of Tomb Mold. Actually, kind of comparable to that new Nothingness album, too. Definitely check this out. This is a fucking banger of an album. Grave, and Here I Die, Satisfied. This is their first EP, came out in 1993. I know I have some of these tracks because some of these tracks were actually featured on the album that would follow this, Soulless, but also, like, there's just some re-recordings, I believe, of stuff that were on earlier albums, but I wanted to get this one just because I love Grave. I love their earlier albums especially, and I am excited to see them at Maryland Death Fest in 2024. Like, that's a serious bucket list band right there. Now, this EP sits kind of right in between two very different releases in Grave's discography. You'll Never See, which is just flat out amazing old school Swedish death metal. It was probably the first Grave album I ever heard. And then their album Soulless, which was definitely a little bit more groove-laden and a little bit more stripped down and maybe like decidedly less brutal. So this is very much a transitional EP. The two tracks that would end up on Soulless, the title track and I Need You, I mean, they're definitely a lot groovier. They're still heavy, they're still riffy, but it kind of loses a lot of the tenacity. Like, there's definitely more of a focus on melody. The vocals have changed maybe slightly, like they're a little bit higher in terms of the growl. They're not quite to where they were on Hating Life, which I don't like that album at all. But Soulless has always been kind of like a so-so album for me. Like, I still like it, but in comparison to like the first two albums, man, it's not even close. But the title track does have like a nice chuggy breakdown on it. It's a solid groove. It's a good riff. Like, there's some good melodies on it. it's just, you know, again, I feel like I'm getting a diet version of the earlier stuff, which Black Dawn actually was a song that they did when they were still called Corpse, and that song has, you know, all the old school grave that I could possibly want. And honestly, the rest of this album is older songs that I really enjoyed, including Tremendous Pain, which I don't think I actually own that one even on any of the reissues. I might have had like a re-recording of it because I think they did re-record it at some point. I might be wrong on that one. But yeah, this is maybe not the most necessary in terms of grave releases, but it does showcase, again, like a weird transitional period in the band's career. And it does have like some great old school stuff in it, but it's stuff that you could just kind of go back and listen to the older albums and still hear them. Black Dawn and Tremendous Pain are probably the main reasons why I went after this. This is a Vic Records reissue. This came out last year. But outside of that, like, there's not much on here I would say is like, oh, it's an absolute fucking must-own for these reasons. I listed the only 2 reasons why I actually went for it. And again, it's good, but again, not really necessary. But yeah, still check it out. Grave's awesome. Check out their earlier stuff. I mean, Solus, I know that album definitely has its fans. I'm more on the fence on that one. But it's at least better than Hating Life, which is fucking awful. I would say flat out just skip that one in general. But yeah, check it out if you're curious. But yeah, check this one out too. It's pretty decent. Slog Divination. This is the second album from this 2-man, California-based, blackened Death Doom act. This came out on Morbid and Miserable Records, which is a Toledo label, so yeah, definitely check out Morbid and Miserable Records. They put out some quality stuff. But I actually got their first one, and I was really impressed by it. It's very similar to, like, you know, Incantation, Incoffination. Actually, I would say they're very close. Lots of dissonant guitars, and, you know, like big bottom heavy doom metal chugs, solid drum work. In fact, the drummer's in like 30 fucking bands, so take that, Rago Johansson, unless he's in a band with you too, which seems extraordinarily possible since Rugga's in every band. But the guitarist and bassist on here is no slouch either. He's in like 10 at least. He's not trying as hard as the drummer, but that's still a lot of fucking bands. But this is a very atmospheric listen, and it's very dark and unsettling. There's lots of, again, like dissonant riffs, again, the big bottom heavy chugs, but there's always like the steady drone of like something in the background, whether it's synths or like feedback or just like single droning, you know, bass notes and shit. I don't know, like there's something about this that always keeps this album very just dingy and creepy. Now, while this is mostly about like that dissonant atmosphere and those like strange dissonant melodies, there's some really good sludge metal riffs. I really like the bending, disgusting riffs that are on Bequested Endowment and Synthesis Sequencer. These are kind of odd titles. And as much as this is like a very slow plotting release, there are some more like up-tempo moments with blast beats, namely Creeping Flora. Kind of breaks up the pace of this album a little bit because this album likes to lumber and wallow in all the murk and misery that it could possibly conjure up. But the guitar work in here I think is really good too. There's a lot of like really good leads, occasionally kind of shreddy leads, which I think is, you know, a little odd, but it does work on here. There's lots of ascending tremolo riffs, big bottom heavy chugs, like there's a good wheelhouse of different guitar styles in here, and they all complement the atmosphere really well. One of the big standouts for me was Self-Value that utilizes them, but I like that song because there is a really nasty, brutal section on there that really stands out from the album. It's one of the heaviest moments on here. But the whole song has some interesting peaks and valleys. Like, that brutal section goes into a really long, drawn-out clean end, which is actually very pretty and very haunting. But yeah, this is really solid. I like elements of this a little bit more than the debut, but there are elements of the debut I like a little bit more than this one. So in terms of which one's better, I don't know. It's kind of a tie, but for different reasons. I think the atmosphere in here is a little bit more dense and creepy and unsettling versus the first one being just heavy and just oppressive. Like, it's just gross. And I think the riffs were maybe a little bit more like primal on that one, and I kind of like that aspect. But either way, both of these are really good. So again, if you like bands like Incantation, Incoffination, Worm, I would say is pretty comparable too. Definitely check this out. It's pretty nasty. And finally, we have Spectral Souls, Towards Extinction. This is the debut full length from this Chilean death metal band. Actually features members from Apocryphon, which is a really good, I believe, Peruvian or Colombian death metal act. Definitely one to check out as well, but this is really fucking good. This has, like, I guess pretty much every trope I like about early death metal. Like this is definitely more that late 80s, early 90s sound. Lots of kind of like Floridian tropes, like there's a serious thrashiness to a lot of this, like lots of galloping, thrashy rhythms. But when it gets into blast beats, it's almost more along the lines of Suffocation with that like kind of full extension hit that Mike Smith was known for in the snare. So the blasts are particularly powerful, but man, it's the riff work on here. The riff work is fantastic. Lots of melody, lots of, what I think are lead trade-offs. It might be one lead guitarist in here, but it sounds like there are leads being traded off, and they do an excellent job. The riffs are powerful, but they're hooky as hell. Vocally, I think it's pretty decent. The dude has just this kind of gruff, dry-throated delivery, not like Martin Van Drunen, but almost more like a death metal version of Lemmy. Like, it's just very throaty and very raw, and dude kind of sounds a little tired and exhausted, but I mean, overall, it works with the music really well. The opening track, I had to giggle a little bit because it's called No More God for Me. Like he's being offered God, like he's being offered like a bunch of extra potato salad at a fucking picnic. They're like, oh no, I'm totally full. I had a lot of God earlier today too, so I'll just pass. But while that was pretty damn funny, dude, as soon as the guitar tone comes in, it's almost like a thrashy HM2 tone. So it's got a little bit of that kind of buzzsaw sort of crunch to it. And man, does it propel these fucking songs. Because the riff work in here is fantastic. Like the song Ego Man, which the songs are much better than some of the song titles, has some excellent guitar harmonies on it. Like very just, energetic, very engaging, very catchy. And the last track, Behind the Lying Glass, actually has some almost like more Mastodon-ish sort of like lead melodies that come in there. A little bit more distant. It adds a lot more atmosphere, but these guys have a main wheelhouse they always get back to. So as much flavor as they kind of splash in these songs, you get right back to like that more thrashy sort of death metal sound, like very similar to like Deicide and Malevolent Creation, albeit like a little bit more groove laden. One of my only complaints is the fact that the title track is essentially just an interlude. Like it's a piano driven, synth driven interlude. It's got some pretty melodies. I think the guitar comes in and kind of complements it a little bit, but I don't know, that's your title track. You figure your title track would be like a fucking rager, and it's just sort of a transitional track that would probably kick off side 2 if you have the vinyl. Not really a huge complaint because I really dug this. This is a fantastic debut. I like that it has like a little bit of that HM2 sizzle to it. It's just solid old school death metal with great fucking riffs. I mean, that's an easy sell for me. This was a fun fucking listen. If you like old school death metal, if you like thrash metal, if you like just like a touch of like Dismember sort of just sprinkled in there as a seasoning, definitely check this out. This is fucking awesome. All right, that knocks out another one. I only have like half a stack I'm working on now for the next collection update, so that one is a little bit far off, but I am going to get down to the next states of metal, and I think I'm going to pick something a little bit more obscure, like maybe a state that isn't noted for a scene. So we can actually talk about some different styles that won't be so centric on like, death metal or fucking thrash metal, or black metal, stoner metal, etc. This will be probably a mixed bag, so I don't know, I'm kind of curious where I'm going to go next. But regardless, I know I have quite a fair amount of bands from all the states. Some of these states I am going to have to combine into one thing just because I just don't have enough bands from that state. But there's definitely plenty that I have a fair amount of bands from. So yeah, working on that, and of course, tons of reviews coming up. So yeah, there's plenty of stuff coming up. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon if you'd like to help us out there. There's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there, as well as our store. We are looking for a different mode of like distribution and such, and we're gonna start working on like getting some other merch. Kind of bogged down with like all things Denver Death Fest, which that's coming up really soon, April 20th through April 22nd in Denver, Colorado. It's become kind of a big focus for a good chunk of us here. So yeah, after that, I think we can start working on stuff for merch. And I think I'm probably going to do a giveaway when I get back too, because I have a stack of music here that I definitely want to give a happy home, and we haven't done a giveaway in a while. So yeah, there's that coming too. And of course, thank you all so much for liking, subscribing, following, all that shit. It, again, is amazing doing this. It's still so much damn fun. We love BSing with you guys. I know, like, I try to think of something different, and I often don't. It's the same awkward thing, but hopefully it's still endearing, because, I mean, we appreciate the living shit out of you guys. It's, it's still surreal that we've come as far as we have. Definitely feel like we bucked some odds there because, I don't know, we're pretty fucking dorky here, but I don't know. Apparently you guys think it's fun, and we're going to keep it rolling because, honestly, I can't think of anything else I would rather do. Honestly, this is like some of the most fun shit I think I've done in my life. So once again, thank you all for everything, and we will catch you later.